Hello, everyone. Um, hello, everyone. I'm going to do a little video here about section 1.6. Okay, so it's about relative measure. Okay, talks a little bit about relative measure, and we talk about how to determine relative measure, how it's just a ratio, it's a fraction, it's a decimal, it's a percent, it's all the same things. Okay, so let me just take a moment to talk a little bit about this for you guys so you get a little assist on assignment 1.6 and the activities, right? And just to reiterate too, we skip 1.5. It's decimal stuff, decimal arithmetic. So it's all the same stuff. You just put a decimal point in. I think you guys can handle that for the most part. Just be careful with entering things in your calculator correctly. Okay. So I'm going to share a screen here, and I'm going to get to where I was in the book here. There we go. So here we are, activity 1.6. Everything is relative. So we got three objectives here. One is to distinguish between absolute and relative measure. The other is to write ratios in fraction, decimal, and percent, and determine equivalence of ratios, like what ratios mean the same thing. All right. So I'm going to talk about these three things. I'm not going to do the activity because that's part of your grade, but I will do parts of it. So let me talk a little bit about the difference between absolute and relative measure. So there's absolute measure. Whoa, my pen here. Let me see my pen. The pen going to work for me now? Absolute measure. Absolute measure is just a measurement, right? I weigh 220 pounds. Boom, absolute measure. I weigh 220 pounds, all right? I ate 3 hot dogs. That's probably why I weigh 220 pounds. I ate 3 hot dogs. That is absolute measure, right? It's just, this is how many. That's it, okay? Now, relative measure is all about comparisons, okay? So here's an idea. For example, it says I ate 3 hot dogs, okay? Hot dogs come in packs of 6 or packs of 8 usually, right? So we'll use a pack of 6. Hot dogs come in packs of 6, okay? I can say if I ate 3 hot dogs, I ate 3 out of 6 in the pack. What that says is I ate half the pack of hot dogs. That's what that says, all right? So that's the difference. Absolute measure versus relative measure. Absolute measure just counts how many. Relative measure makes a comparison. Here's another idea. I missed 2 questions on the test. Absolute measure. I missed 2 questions on the test. I want to know if I did a good job. Did I do well? Well, that depends because I don't know how many questions were on the test. So the test had 3 questions, right? So I missed 2 out of 3. Let me talk about what I got right. So I missed 2 questions on a test. That's absolute measure. The test had 3 questions, right? I got 1 right. How did I do? Well, 1 question right out of 3 total questions. 1/3 as a decimal is 0.6667, right? It's really 0.6 repeating, but we can round it. And now to make this a percentage, right? No, not 0.6667. Sorry, my bad. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 repeating, right? That, just like that. Now, I can make this decimal a percent by moving a decimal 2 places to the right. Boom, boom. 33.33%. Like that. Okay. Short video, guys, because I don't want to clog up the space too much, but let's just recap a little bit. Absolute measure versus relative measure. Absolute measure is just a measurement. I weigh 220 pounds. I ate 3 hot dogs, whatever it may be. Relative measure is about a comparison. Hot dogs come in packs of 6. If I ate 3 of those hot dogs, 3 out of 6 is half the pack, right? And you can make arguments for what sounds like more. Is 3 hot dogs a lot? I don't know. Is half the pack a lot? Maybe there's some subjectivity there. Maybe it makes you think like it's more. There's some psychology to it. Maybe you feel like you think like it's more or something like, oh, half a pack. Oh, yuck. Well, if the pack's 6, you ate 3. Maybe that's not a big deal, right? So we often use these relative measure terminology to affect how we think psychologically on purpose, right? Saying I ate 3 hot dogs has a different psychological meaning than saying I ate half the pack. So I can sell you things using relative measure. And if you're not really thinking clearly, you know, you say half the pack, what? Well, wait a minute, that was only 3 hot dogs. What's the big deal? Or whatever, you know what I mean? Test question, same deal. I missed 2 questions on a test. If the test is only 3 questions, I didn't do well. How did I do? I got a third of them right. What if there were 100 questions on the test? Well, I got 98 out of 100 right. That's really good. That's a 98%, right? What do we do once we have relative measure? Well, recognize how I can write it. I can write it as a fraction. I can write it as a decimal or as a percent, okay? Part of this activity is going to ask you to understand the difference between absolute and relative measure. It's going to ask you to compute relative measure. And then it's going to ask you to make decimals and fractions, okay? If you want to turn a fraction to a decimal, all right, just divide, okay? To go from a decimal back to a fraction, rewrite it appropriately. Let me show you what I mean, all right? Let me make a little more space in here. So for a decimal to fraction, so 1/2, literally divide. That gives me 0.50. And then for a percent, multiply by 100. And that gives you 50%, okay? Starting with a fraction, working your way to percentage, that's pretty straightforward. But if you have a percentage first, 25%, if you have this first, how do you go back and get a fraction? Well, make it a decimal. So we're going to divide by 100. That will give us 0.25. In other words, move the decimal 2 places to the left, all right? Now, how do we make this a fraction? If you can read that number correctly without using the word point, then you're good to go. 0.25 is 25/100ths. And then use your calculator in the way I showed you the videos before to reduce that fraction. Boom. And there you have it, right? 3 big themes, guys. 3 big themes from this activity. Absolute measure versus relative measure. The other one is how to make comparisons with relative measure and how to rewrite as fraction, decimal, percent, and then finding equivalent fractions, such as this. Those are equivalent fractions, okay? Do your best. This video should help you with 1.6. The homework for 1.6, 1.5, 1.6 in my math lab aren't due for a little while yet, or 1.4 and 1.6, excuse me. They're not due for a little while yet, but you do have the videos to knock out the activity soon, all right? Thanks, guys. I hope everything's going well for you. If you need me in any way, shape, or form, reach out to me, text, email, whatever it may be, all right? I'll help you the best I can. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.